Entrepreneurship is a very big word. We're going to tell you what it really means on Business Matters. What do you think it means? Hello, I'm Dr. Heather Norris, Dean of Appalachian State's Walker College of Business. Welcome to the premiere of Business Matters. One of the things we're most proud of is our entrepreneurship programs. And to help explain them, I'd like for you to meet Dr. Heather Dixon Fowler from our Department of Management, Dr. Mark Lewis, also from the Department of Management, Eric Slanker, the Director of the Transportation Insight Center for Entrepreneurship, and Merrick Marquis, Class of 15, and himself an entrepreneur. Heather, tell us, what is entrepreneurship?
Well, like you said, entrepreneurship's a big word, and I think there are a lot of different perspectives on what it is, and I think this is a great panel to represent a variety of perspectives and synergies among those perspectives. So I'll just start, I guess, by talking a little bit about how we view it from an academic standpoint in the College of Business, how we teach it and what our focuses are. And I would say that we probably have two primary focuses or themes that run throughout. The first being that we focus on developing an entrepreneurial mindset, meaning that students learn how to recognize opportunities, to recognize problems or needs that maybe the average person doesn't recognize. And I think the second part of entrepreneurship, as far as how we view it in our goals, is to teach the entrepreneurial process. So once you've identified a problem or a need to solve, coming up with solutions and strategies to solve that problem and taking the initiative to do so. So I think from our perspective, entrepreneurship can be applied in a variety of settings, whether it's the traditional way we view entrepreneurship, so starting a business, or whether it's in social enterprise or even nonprofit management, or if a student after graduation wants to go and work for a corporation. What we're finding is that companies appreciate graduates that have entrepreneurial skills, that can recognize opportunities for their companies and that take the initiative to solve those problems and do something about it.
That's so true. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
Well, at the Center for Entrepreneurship, I think we create a very nice complement to the fine work that Heather and her colleagues do, because they go to the classroom, they learn these techniques and these skills, and then they get the opportunity to come down to the Center for Entrepreneurship, and they get to try them out for real. So we help them to incubate and develop and even conceive the ideas right there in the center. And we have a variety of programs to support the students through that process. We have a club that allows them to explore their ideas. They work on some prepackaged ideas and get some experience. We have an incubator that allows them to start their businesses or their ventures right there while they're going to school. And we have a mentor program to hook them up with people and resources in the community to help to get their ideas off the ground and then try them out for real. And then when they're ready to graduate, very often they step right into those roles and they can start to run the businesses full-time right out of school.
Yeah, I think the process that you alluded to, Heather, too, in terms of coming up with an idea, kind of speaks to the topic of innovation and the importance of innovation. And there's a lot of fancy academic kind of definitions of what innovation is, but really at the end of the day, it's coming up with ways of doing things better, new ways of doing things better. And so that's kind of the essence of an entrepreneur, coming up with a new way of doing things better, taking it to the market through the process of commercialization. But as you said too, innovation doesn't just have to happen within the context of a new venture or a new firm. Innovation has to happen within existing firms as well, if they want to sustain themselves and continue to grow. And so I think that's one thing we do well is focus more broadly on entrepreneurship as well as innovation.
So Mark, you used a big word there, commercialization. Merrick, tell us what commercialization means and how you as a student entrepreneur have put that to work.
I think it's really bringing these simple ideas and these problem-solving natures to the world to either create profit or to create human good or some sort of change that you would like to see in the world. Whether or not it's bringing a new product or a new service or making a change to your community. We see that a lot in the center. We have individuals who come in who have this great new idea that they're trying to build out and prototype. We have kids who are trying to start fish farms in Haiti to help the public good there, and it's really is multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark was talking about value proposition, and Heather talked about that as well. And that's really the most important thing, is you got to figure out what problem you're solving, what good are you doing. Whether you're bringing good to a person, or you're bringing good to another business, or you're creating some kind of measurable value in a unique way. And once you get that concept down, then it's a matter of following a process of bringing that idea to market. And that's the commercialization process. And it takes a number of different steps in the process, and you can learn those, and then you can get coached through those, and take an idea and bring it to reality in a relatively short amount of time. Merrick is an excellent example of that. He conceived his business, and I think 4 weeks later he was taking orders online, and it was and he's still going strong after 4 or 5 months.
I think also what you mentioned earlier about the mindset is really, really key, because very often people consider entrepreneurs as sort of against the grain, but I think we're also seeing a lot of sort of trends in the industry toward corporate entrepreneurship as well, and that sort of entrepreneurial mindset in businesses as a whole. So maybe entrepreneurship is sort of gaining traction across the entire business community because it's this sort of desire for innovation and change even within organizations, as well as for new ventures and new social ventures.
So Heather, is that something that people are born with? Are people born entrepreneurs, or is it something that's learned?
That's the big debate, right? I think that question is probably related to the bigger question of sort of nature versus nurture in anything with children and who we end up becoming as adults and in our career paths and things. And I think it would be hard to argue that it's one or the other. I know there are people on different sides of that debate, but I think we can step back and look at it and probably say it's a little bit of both, I think. Now, I will say I think more people are born on, I think that children, when we look at children and we know their first, from birth to age 5, those are their most creative years, right? And I think children are born very entrepreneurial for the most part. And I think it's then experiences or lack of experiences, whether they have reinforcing experiences, mentors, education, et cetera, that maybe drive them in certain directions or not. If I didn't think that entrepreneurship could be taught or that education didn't matter, I wouldn't be in this position, and I've been a real world entrepreneur as well. And I think what we consistently hear from alumni that are successful entrepreneurs, whether they're on Eric's advisory board or just people that we work with, is that they wish there had been programs like what we offer, both from the academic side and through the center when they were college students, because they didn't quite have something that fit with what they were trying to do. And so I think that what we can do is take people who are maybe predisposed to entrepreneurship already and make them better entrepreneurs. Okay?
I want to go back to something you said there in that answer, which was that individuals are the most creative from birth to 5 years old. I had the opportunity to hear from a man today at lunch who came up with a business idea, and it really was spawned from his son, who was playing with those little rubber balls that you bounce around, and he had a collection of these things, and so they developed a product together. I think his son is about 3 or 4, and it's just amazing. Boxes and balls, and a whole set of boxes and balls with a finish on it and some instructions on how to play this game that they've developed, and it really is for people of all ages. So that's
a great
neat.
story. Yeah, it's a great story. I don't think kids are not limited by what we have told them is possible or not possible. And the other thing I think we see with young children is that they're encouraged when they fail. So when a baby's learning to walk as a toddler and they fall down, we don't discourage them and tell them that how dare you fall down and you're a failure because you fell down. We clap for them and tell them to get up and try again. And I think that comfort with failure is also something that a lot of successful entrepreneurs talk about. So I think, and that goes back to the process we teach too. I mean, sometimes at the end of the day, students are, a team of students goes through the process, especially the planning side of it, the business model development, and they get to the end and they say, Dr. Fowler, I think I'm going to fail your class because we got to the end and, this is not going to be feasible. And I'm like, well, you get an A+, because that's the process, right? It's like, that's what we want you to do. It's be able to recognize whether an opportunity is able to be exploited or not. And so, I think from that standpoint, yes, we can take people who are maybe have that predisposition and make them better entrepreneurs, or we can take people who maybe, students who maybe didn't necessarily see themselves as entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial, and we hear this, right, from students all the time. I didn't think I was an entrepreneur, and then they start to recognize through being nurtured in our classroom and through the programs and opportunities that we offer that they actually are very entrepreneurial, and we can help bring that out of them.
So Eric, take somebody like Elon Musk, who founded Tesla and SpaceX. What kind of timeline did he have? And if he had been a student at the Walker College of Business, what would we have done in our academic programming and in the center? Or to help other students become the next Elon Musk? What value added that we've been hearing about here tonight? What value added things are we giving them in the center?
Well, I think in that particular case, he could have taught us a lot because he's one of those folks that's naturally predisposed to be an entrepreneur. Some of the things that we talked about in characteristics, adventurous is one of them. Somebody who is a natural entrepreneur is somebody who's not afraid to try new things, and is able to step back and have a bigger picture on how the world works and figure out ways that they can impact that world. And then there are some things that you learn how to do, like persistence and risk tolerance and things that Heather was talking about. Those are things that you learn over time through practice. When you don't think of a failure as a defeat, you think of it as a first try, or you think of failure as a second try. But eventually those failures teach you things that allow you to improve and get better. So it's very rare for an entrepreneur to have immediate success on their first try. And Elon Musk is an example of that. He smashed a lot of rockets at SpaceX, and a lot of things crashed into the ocean before he finally connected to the space station. And that kind of persistence and vision is exactly the kind of thing that you need as an entrepreneur to get you past some of those inevitable roadblocks that you're going to hit.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I think it's a really good take on kind of what our role here is at the Walker College of Business within the Entrepreneurship Center. And that I think, especially from a faculty perspective, I see my role as one where I need to learn from people like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs. And then I take that knowledge and I synthesize it and I package it in some way that we can deliver it to a broader audience. And not necessarily for the purpose of creating the next Elon Musk, although, let's be honest, that would be great.
And we may have him sitting at the
We
table
might
with
have
us today.
Sure, but really because we need more innovative problem solvers across all of our organizations, just not only here in the high country, down the mountain, and across the states and across the world. And so I think we do that. And a perfect example, another innovator that we talk about a lot, Steve Jobs. Of course, there are many reasons that he was who he was and the great work that he did. But if you step back, I think one of the things he did so well was he demystified technology. He realized that human beings were innately scared of technology. So he had this deep-seated knowledge of what human beings want and need, and he's able to combine that knowledge with technology to solve that problem, to come up with solutions where people weren't scared of. And so, for instance, my mom, who probably still doesn't know how to use a CD player, is on her iPhone and iPad all the time. And so in class, we can teach those skills of empathy training, of getting inside the shoes of our customers to get at those deep needs, and then build that into the innovation process.
Yeah, and from an entrepreneurial mindset standpoint, I think both those examples are really close related from the standpoint that in articles that I've read where they've had interviewed Steve Jobs or interviews with Elon Musk, both in video and written form, they both point to a very similar theme. Elon regularly says, repeatedly in every interview I've seen, he says, I never set out to be a financial success. Money was never part of the equation. He's like, I just wanted to get by. And in fact, for a while when they first started, they were showering at the YMCA because they'd had no money, and that was never the purpose. He said his purpose was that he saw all these problems and all this potential, and he wanted to change the world. And I think Steve Jobs had a similar perspective. He's gone now, but Guy Kawasaki, who was on the original team for Macintosh and worked closely with Steve Jobs, talks a lot in his books and videos about how and that Macintosh team had no real interest in money. That Steve Jobs never put pressure on them about profits or returns. He was solely focused on making meaning, and that's really the theme you see throughout is they wanted to make meaning in the consumer's everyday life. What meaning were they going to bring to the table? And through that, they would make money. But they didn't set out to make the money. It was an entrepreneurial mindset of solving problems.
And I think there's a small amount of risk in holding up Steve Jobs and Elon Musk as examples for students who walk in the center, because what they don't realize is some of the ideas that they bring to the center, they might be small ideas today. They might be the kernel of a great idea in the future. And when they come into the center, one thing we're able to do is to take what they're bringing and say, that has a lot of potential, and help them to think bigger.
Yeah.
Because a lot of students think in terms of, I need to make enough money to survive, to pay my rent, to pay for my grocery bill. And so they're thinking in the short term, 12 to 18 months ahead, and they're thinking about a world that doesn't need a lot to survive. And if you can step them out of that mindset and help them to think bigger, then the opportunity becomes larger, and they become inspired by that, and then they can push harder. And Merrick's an example of that. When he walked in, he's developed a business that imports custom suits for students on campus. Well, he could have thought about that in terms of Appalachian State, because we have 17,000 students. There's a perfectly good sized market there. But he recognizes that the opportunity is bigger than that. He's got brand representatives on colleges across the United States that are selling his product. So by being in the environment around students like Merrick, with examples like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs, you're able to take some of these smaller ideas and share with them the fact that they could be bigger with a little bit of juice and support.
And Merrick, I know you probably don't want to toot your own horn, but I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you, what is your vision, and do you have just one business that you're involved in right now?
No, so my business is called Corner Tailors, cornertailors.com, and we sell custom tailored suits to young professionals and college students. And the idea came from the desire for people like me, because I recognized a problem because I was talking to my friends about it, and they weren't able to get a suit that really fit them well, that they were confident in for these job interviews. So I tried to figure out ways to do it within our own team. So then we started here at App, and now we're trying to move to 50 campuses in the next 18 months. And it's just one of those things where you start small and build up. And on the side, I also work with a management consulting firm out of the Raleigh area, and I'm also working with an IT infrastructure firm that sells massive servers that go into every big company that you know, the stuff that runs these companies like Piggly Wiggly and things of that nature. And then I've got 3 other ideas that are sort of in that process of developing and moving forward.
So you'll be a serial entrepreneur,
Yeah,
which means
probably.
an entrepreneur who comes up with ideas over and over and over again throughout your lifetime.
Yeah.
I think,
Eric,
oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead, Mark.
Well, I think in listening to Merrick talk and getting back a little bit to our conversation on trying to learn some of these patterns that innovators have, they tend to approach problems from multiple perspectives. So they have this multidisciplinary approach. And I mentioned Steve Jobs. He had this deep-seated knowledge of human behavior and what scared them, as well as this knowledge of technology and design. Elon Musk had multiple degrees from Pennsylvania in physics and economics. And as Merrick's talking about there, he's not only utilizing his business experience, but in talking with him before this, there's a keen awareness of design, what people want, and how to measure, clothes appropriately. And so he's coupling, multiple perspectives. And again, that's something we can teach.
Yeah, I think my first knowledge of Merrick was when he came to my office and wanted to know how he could take about 23 hours of coursework in a given semester, because he was a triple major and a double minor, and he was also involved in lots of activities on campus. So again, maybe not the best example for those who are just starting out thinking about being entrepreneurs. We have something for everyone, even those who are just trying to decide whether they have those special characteristics, and then the education to go along with it, to put those 2 together and then give it a try. And maybe you fail a few times, but eventually you hit that success. Eric, speaking of being an entrepreneur, you are one. So how have you used your personal story and experience to coach those that come to the center?
Well, that's a good question. I have an engineering degree. And when I started my own business, I had never taken a business class. So having learned how to run a business through the School of Hard Knocks, I have an appreciation for the business school that is probably unprecedented. I can see how all the coursework and all the real life experience and the mentorships and the opportunities that students have here are going to help them tremendously in helping to get their businesses off the ground. So my role as the director of the center is just to help students to avoid some of the obvious pitfalls that are out there. They're inevitable. And if I can help them to anticipate those problems and to work through those problems, then I've done my job.
And to be clear, a lot of these students who come into the Center for Entrepreneurship aren't business majors. We get a lot of industrial design students, sustainable development students, obviously a fair share of business students, people from computer science who just have an idea and they just want a place to talk about it, to think through the problem, to talk about the opportunity, and finally come to that answer of, is this feasible? Can this become a business?
And that's true also in the academic programs. So in our classes, it's not just business students. We have a good mix of students from cross campus, everything from fermentation science to photography to industrial design to art, sustainable development. So it's interesting, and I think that it was very deliberate on our part to offer entrepreneurship as a minor versus a major degree at this point because of what we've just been talking about, the multidisciplinary approach that it takes to be successful as an entrepreneur, is that you should pair the entrepreneurial mindset and then the knowledge of that process and the experience with that process to other factors, to other perspectives as well.
And so for those in our audience who might not be pursuing a bachelor's degree at Appalachian right now, one opportunity for them to learn more is to take that degree. But also, in speaking with Eric, you're developing some things on your website that maybe the community can take a look at and learn from. Is that correct?
Yes, we are. As a matter of fact, we're trying to wrestle with the fact that the Center for Entrepreneurship is only so big, and there are 17,000 people on campus, students on campus. We have a faculty, we have a staff, and we have an entrepreneurial community here in Boone, and they're all looking for resources. So we're doing our best to package some of the resources that we have developed in the center, make them available on our website so that they're available to the students, they're available to anybody really who wants to come online and at least get oriented to the tools that an entrepreneur needs and have access to some of the support without using human bandwidth, at least not initially.
So let's take a step back and say, how did we end up with a Center for Entrepreneurship, and how did it get the name Transportation Insight Center for Entrepreneurship?
Well, we have a terrific support coming from Transportation Insight. Transportation Insight is a company in Hickory that does third-party logistics, which means they're shipping experts. So a company that develops a product and doesn't necessarily have expertise in shipping will outsource that or use the services of Transportation Insight in order to meet their shipping needs. They recruit a lot of supply chain management from us as a college, and their founder is obviously an entrepreneur and a very successful one at that. So he has embraced the entrepreneurship community here at Appalachian, and through a large donation that helped us to get the center off the ground and developed into the space that it's in now, and some funding to support us for 10 years. We have the opportunity to provide those services across campus. So we're very fortunate to have their support.
We are indeed.
Interestingly, too, the entrepreneur is not, and the supporter, he's not an alumni of Appalachian State. He moved here from another state, and but he is a big believer in Appalachian State and specifically in the entrepreneurial programs. And so I think that's really interesting, and it's great to have support from somebody whose sole connection to us is through our initially was through our students, really, and the students that he was hiring. So
an entrepreneur himself hiring entrepreneurs from Appalachian and making an investment in that future, not only for his company, but for other companies hiring our students as well. What a great story.
That's how I got started as well. As I just walked into the office one day and I was like, Eric, I have an idea. And he's like, let's go get coffee. And we sat down and started plotting things out.
So Mark, why is entrepreneurship important, and why is innovation important?
Well, I think I'd go back to what Heather said about children from 0 to 5 years old and how they tend to be most creative. And if we watch them, they engage in problem solving and learning and coming up with new things. And so my point there is I think it's a human endeavor to come up with things, to innovate, to ideate. And so I think if we can instill more entrepreneurial thinking in organizations, we're going to create better places to work. And hopefully the outcome of that and that type of thinking is better products, better services that are more sustainable, that do a better job of solving the problems of the world. And that's an awesome goal.
And really, entrepreneurship is sort of the founding principle of our country. I mean, not to get too ethereal about it, but if it wasn't for entrepreneurship and innovation, our country would not be what it was, and it's going to be really important that we maintain those skills going forward. Coming through the Great Recession, the job market is entirely different than it used to be. The jobs are being created by different types of companies, and anybody with a good idea that's able to take that idea and nurture it and bring it along and develop it into a real business is helping all of us.
I think from a social entrepreneurial standpoint too, to build on, I mean, I agree with everything that Eric and Mark have said. And I think, you know, we have business matters. That's kind of the theme of our series. But, you know, I think that the way we approach it is that as a college is that business is a powerful source, you know, powerful force, for good or for not, you know, and there are plenty of examples in the press of the not. And what we're trying to do as a college is to take a different approach through sustainable business, through entrepreneurship and innovation. We can't keep throwing the same solutions at these complicated problems, and even problems that we don't even know that exist yet, whether they're social, environmental, or from a consumer standpoint, and that we need the innovation and the new approaches, and that we need that students, you know, that can develop that mindset and know that process will be that much better prepared for the world that they're about to enter into and in the future.
I think we also see that with, again, the new ventures that come through the center. Ours is trying to help students dress professionally for the upcoming workforce, but we also have, again, students who are creating food sources for individuals in Haiti, and then students who are just trying to solve needs.
Well, that's our program for this week. Thank you so much to my guests. Please join us again for Walker College's Business Matters. I'm Heather Norris. Good night.